labels, nowalls.net and join us in Zoom.
Hello everybody, and welcome to the No Labels, No Walls plus We Are One Festival 2020. I'm your host Markus Vähälä, and I welcome all of you to the Citizen Cafe. The Citizen Cafe is run by Citizen Network, a global network consisting of over 150 organizations and thousands of people. And the Citizen Fest is a festival promoting citizenship for all. And our festival is being organized by Citizen Network members. So Kukunori from Finland, We Are One Community in Scotland, and the Strindberg Laboratory in Los Angeles. The festival provides over 100 events, talks, discussion, art, theatre, performances, and a possibility for people to join into conversations, to meet new people, and to learn together. So we are running with 2 streams online, almost 24/7 from Monday to Saturday. And now we are experiencing Wednesday, so we are right on schedule. And with me, I have Dr. Simon Duffy from England and John Dalrymple from Scotland. Welcome to the Citizen Cafe. Simon, could you introduce yourself and tell us, what does Citizen Fest mean to you? What is the best parts of it?
Hello. So yeah, I'm Simon Duffy. I live in Sheffield, which is in the north of England. And I have kind of 2 jobs. One is I run a think tank called the Centre for Welfare Reform. And the other job is really working with Markus to run this thing called Citizen Network, which we started 4 years ago now. I think we launched it in New Zealand in November 2016. Citizen Fest, I suppose, John is on this call too, and John will speak after me, I suspect. I remember kind of some point, maybe was it the end of 2018? Yes, I think it was. And we were wanting to try and organize some kind of event in Glasgow because we needed to gather some of the folk involved in Citizen Network together. And there was a big kind of academic, slightly boring conference going on, but that would give an excuse for some people to come to Glasgow. And so I rang up John and said, hey, wouldn't it be good if we had some kind of festival and we could kind of bring people together and share some of the really interesting things that don't normally get a good hearing. You know, the problem with power is it's boring. The people who climb to the top of the pyramids of power are not usually the most interesting, exciting, or innovative people. I mean, they're not all bad people. There's lots of good people, but it's not exciting. So the idea of Citizen Fest really was to say, let's bring together exciting new ideas. Let's bring together the people. And also let's bring together people who sometimes don't get to cooperate, that we might share deep beliefs about being equal, about how a world where things are different is good. Like, we don't want a boring world, we want an interesting world with lots of difference in it. But but the people fighting the fights against racism, against sexism, against prejudice against disability, the LGBTQ communities, they don't normally get together. We don't find common cause. We don't get a chance to listen to each other and see what we've got in common ourselves. And I think that maybe for me is the beauty of how Citizen Fest has evolved. It's what I love the most, is just seeing things come together where you see it does fit, but somehow things that are very different fit together. And people who may be on different paths, their paths cross. And so it was wonderful to see that last year in the physical, real world of Glasgow, and then to see it this year now 3-4 times as big and in this online world. Yeah, I just find it very exciting, and I feel sometimes a little guilty because really all I did was ring John up. And I haven't actually had to do very much other than to support great people like John and Francis and Markus and all the other people involved from the back, but all the leadership has come from communities themselves.
Thank you, Simon. John, you and me, we have collaborated in creating this wonderful festival week. And the idea is not only to bring ideas and people together, but also unions of people, communities, and organizations and networks. What does Citizen Fest mean to you?
Yeah, well, Citizen Fest, as Simon has hinted, means a very sharp learning curve. First and foremost, learning about all sorts of technology this year as well. So that's been a huge thing. But fundamentally, Citizen Fest means the kind of collaboration that Simon was talking about there with people that perhaps we wouldn't normally mix with in our little bubbles in the social care world. Whether, I spent most of my career working in a kind of disability sphere. But the great thing, your slogan for the festival really captures it. The walls are broken down. The walls between different groups of people who are campaigning and working hard for social justice are kind of knocked out of the way, and suddenly we find we're in the same room together, whether it's a virtual room as it is this year, but we're in the same room together. We believe the same things, the same principles and values are at stake, and we just haven't made this common cause before. So we're in the very early stages of doing it, and we're still finding out how to do it better, more effectively, but we are involved in something quite creative, where music and drama meets serious talk and debate, which is another element of it all, and sometimes you think, oh, well, does that really work? Does that fit? But it does. It's the diversity. It's the one feeds the other. So we, in a very strange way, there's a guy who's 70. He was 70 yesterday, quite a famous musician in his own right. He wrote a song a few years back called "We Are One." He hears about the festival. He says, "Why don't you use this?" So yeah, all sorts of things.
John, I would like to continue a little bit about the We Are One community. Can you tell a little bit more about the people who are working for the festival?
Well, there's a curious, oops. Yeah, sorry, muting. See, so much to learn. It's curious that the community has its links back in the mid-90s, when a few of us were all doing the same thing. So there's Francis, myself, and Simon, and Emma Soanes, and Hugh Torrance. We were all involved in the work to help people get out of the long stay learning disability hospitals in Scotland. And here we are meeting up 25 years later, and we're all doing slightly different things. And Hugh is working in the LGBTQI community that Simon mentioned. Emma's working in an organization called Unity Enterprise, which is reaching out to some of the poorest people in the city and also to disabled people. And I suppose the community kind of was a group of people catching up with each other after all this time, introducing each other to people that we'd found along the way over the last 25 years. Meeting people in the refugee community in Glasgow, meeting people in the mental health community, and thinking, gosh, if we maybe could get this person involved, then he or she could introduce us to this other person, and we would have all sorts of. So there's a core group of people who've known each other a long time, who work in the voluntary sector, who work for different organisations, who've been on slightly different journeys, and we're just kind of collaborating in a true networking sort of way to build and expand that group of people who are feeling that, yeah, this is something really interesting. We could get involved with this. We could put our name to this, and we can bring resources that you don't have to it.
I'm very fascinated of your network there in Scotland, because I think you are. I can feel the positive energy and the constant learning, the will to learn and to use these skills together for the embetterment of the society in a way that is also this year we are looking at you digitally here from Finland, but I feel I'm also part of your team because you have invited us to take part in the preparations, and either way there's people from your community joining forces with No Labels, No Walls.
And you and I had met up through Citizen Network online like this, and then there you were in the flesh in Glasgow last August. Little did we know that you had a plan up your sleeve to go back, and you were running No Labels and Walls, No Walls in September. So you kept that quiet. So yeah, I think part of what we do is part of the energy comes from frustration and continued anger at what's not been achieved, what should have been achieved and hasn't been achieved, and the continuing kind of ability of the system to resist real change. So that is a challenge to us all, I think, whatever domain we're working in, that we're all coming up against those. It's another common aspect that we all come up against those frustrations where the human rights that are embedded in legislation, 20 years later are not really respected, for instance, so yeah, but there is a lot of energy, determination, and good fun. So serious fun is the tag we've given to the festival. They're really serious, like Simon's 7 Keys to Citizenship are serious issues for all of us in our lives, but we're trying to have fun in celebrating them and in asserting them and challenging society to deliver on them.
Yes, you are using the keys to citizenship as the sort of like core principle of the content of the festival also.
Aye.
Could you, Simon, tell a little bit about what the keys to citizenships are?
Yeah, fun. Yeah, it's funny actually, isn't it? This we talk about 7 keys to citizenship, and it's a framework for thinking about life. It's a way of understanding what citizenship really means. In a way, it's opposed to, contradicts what I would call passport citizenship, which is when people go, I'm a citizen because I belong to the United Kingdom or America, and I've got the right coloured passport. That's the opposite of what we mean. We don't mean people kind of clinging to some identity. We mean actually being somebody who's genuinely treated as an equal. And how does that happen? And it turns out that isn't just a kind of like a nice idea. It's actually something that's got to be concrete, made real. As John's indicating, really, he and I worked together a lot over the years, but particularly in closing an institution called Lennox Castle Hospital, which was in Glasgow, horrible place. We helped people come out of that institution to reclaim their own citizenship. And the idea of the keys to citizenship, I didn't write it all down until after I'd finished doing this work in Glasgow, but it's really based on the work that was done in Glasgow. You start to think about how does somebody take their place as a citizen? Well, you really need to understand what's meaningful for that person to begin with. Like citizenship isn't done to a formula that's somebody else's formula. It has to be from you. But people also need to be free and in control of their own life and being able to make mistakes and try things out. People need some resources. One of the things John and I did, which was very radical at the time, was say each person who came out of Lennox Castle Hospital, they had their own budget and their support was designed around that budget. And at Inclusion Glasgow, which is the organisation John helped me set up, that was the organising principle for everything we did. Then help needs to be something that's personal and right for the person and respectful. It's got to be a partnership, not helping from above, but really people working together. And people need to have homes which are their own homes, which they have control over. And people need a life where they not only join in, but they share their gifts. They participate. And actually the first version of the Keys to Citizenship stopped there. And then my friend Wendy Perez, who is a woman with learning difficulties who lives in London, but I've known her a long time, she said, Simon, sex is missing. And I couldn't quite see sex as a seventh key to citizenship, but love seemed to me actually to be missing a bit, that actually it was a little bit cold. And really love is also the end and the start of the keys to citizenship. In a way, all these things are how you make love real. You know, if you think about what you want for your children, which I think is a pretty good test, or for the people you really love, then it's citizenship. It's not power, it's not money. Well, these are stupid things. But citizenship is something that you can wish for those you love. And it doesn't compete. Your citizenship, Markus, doesn't compete with my citizenship. John's, in fact, the more citizens we have, the stronger all our citizenship. So it's a fantastic, in philosophy, it's a non-zero sum gift. It doesn't all just have to be balanced out like money. It's something that grows up. So yeah, that was the idea, and I think that's the thing that, going back to as John said, all these different groups coming together. But at the heart of it is something fun and exciting, which is we have a really big idea. It's not like a small idea. It's not like a marginal idea. It's not the idea just for the special people who have to be included in ordinary society. That sucks. Ordinary society sucks. What we want is everybody to be a citizen. That's an idea that I think is exciting and fun and serious, and potentially revolutionary in a world which is crying out for citizenship.
John, can you elaborate how these keys are visible inside your program, and what kind of discussion have you had over the keys when creating the schedule for the We Are One festival in Scotland?
We have allocated one theme per day, which is tricky since there's only 6 days of the festival, but we've used 2 on Saturday, culminating in love, as Simon says. So it's there as a kind of underlying organizing principle, but I mean, you know, the problems of scheduling and programming are such that you need to be quite pragmatic in terms of who can do what on which days, or how the program balances on particular days. So and it's also true to say that what Simon said there is they are a bit elusive as things in themselves. They all run into each other. So you might think you're the theme today is, let's say, life, but before you know it, you're really hooked into the issue of purpose and freedom, etc. So we've had lots of interesting debates, as you suggest, particularly sitting around a programming meeting and thinking, yeah, this is a really good organizing principle. And you'll see behind me, I think, the banner. We've got the 7 keys there, and they are such ordinary things, that are really important to everyone. So they translate to everyone and anyone who gets involved with the festival. Everyone gets it. So that's really good. So yeah, so it's a complicated picture. I think is what I'm saying to you. That and sometimes I think we could be better. We could be better at being more thematic, but maybe next year.
And next year we will have the festival again. So we have to collect our learning during this week and continue learning until the next festivals happening all over the world. A little bit about myself. I'm Markus from Finland. I'm working in Kukunori, which is an umbrella organization of 41 Finnish NGOs working with mental health, disability, minority, and civil rights. And Kukunori is a NGO where culture is very relevant. That's our connection to the key issues, like the 7 keys to citizenship. And I find it very useful platform because that's quite equal. You can listen to music and have feelings and thoughts around it, but especially when you play together, you create a band or an orchestra where everybody is needed, and you can design these orchestras in many ways, and you can be in different roles. And couple of years ago, I met a theater professional called Michael Bierman from Los Angeles. He was here in Helsinki together with his wife, who is Finnish, and he just started to walk and meet people. He did something, and he said that, what if we have a festival where everybody would be welcome? What would it look like? That was a question in the beginning. Would you like to do it with me? And that whole question is like the motor that somehow people started to think that, hey, there's some point here. Where is the festival where I could perform, for example, something? What is the topic that is my passion that I want to share with somebody else? What are the things that I could learn from my peers, from other citizens in a way? And little by little we started meeting, and I'm working in a experimental laboratory designing support for NGOs working with these hard topics, complex topics. And then we had an idea that, hey, let's, out of all this data, let's combine them into a festival. Because I think that the festival is a very good format to bring people together so we can do stuff. It's a very good way to bring people together to find meanings. And these meanings are living in dialogue. So if we have this conversation, after this conversation, I think I trust you more, I know better, I have new ideas for the future, and I have hope. And the hope comes from there, that there is no others. Organizations as such are only structures, platforms, but the people are important. So we engaged last year over 600 people, and having over 50 different workshops and performances in Helsinki in 3 locations. So the same principle then continued. Michael left Finland to Los Angeles, and we started to communicate digitally with the community. And little by little, the community is growing up, but it demands a lot of determination, and that comes from feelings in my perspective. And what is the format that brings out feelings? It's culture and art. So I think if you think a person in a holistic way, this kind of festivals bringing in all this kind of talent and the topics actually makes them both better, because the artists can relate to the topics, another way around, the feelings and emotions, and this kind of more holistic way of exploring phenomena is being brought out. And the key question for the future is that how can we coordinate and have leadership in a way in this kind of networks of people, equal people with their own needs and aspirations, but also shared values and visions. And I think that the future is in unity and this kind of will to participate, to have a dialogue and to have an open mind for learning. But for that, we need platforms that support this kind of understanding and seeing complex issues. The researchers say that the truth is out there. We cannot point it out, or we don't have the silver bullet to fix it out. But it's more like a spaghetti of things mixed together, where we are all in this with our skills and with our environment and with our actions. And I think we are on the way to also to have like peer groups and peer networks that relate to the things that challenge us to continue. Because even though the people change, the questions remain. So I would like to ask you, Simon, what is the question where Citizen Network is the answer?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, it might not be the right answer really, but is how do we find good stuff out? And so what do I mean? The inspiration for Citizen Network, there are a few different threads actually, but one of them is that over the last 10 years or so, I've traveled quite a lot. So I've gone to different places. I was very lucky to spend 3 months living in Finland, which was wonderful. And I've worked in America and Australia and in other places in Europe and New Zealand and Canada. Very lucky to be asked to come and speak, and then usually come and speak and explain and say, hey, what about this? But in one way, what you find is that you are really telling stories about things that are going on somewhere else. You're just a traveler. Yeah. And also in the work that for the last 10 years, I've been running this think tank, and the think tank, what I quite like is writing and thinking. But really, how do people learn stuff? Well, sometimes it's by writing or thinking, and reading. But I think, as you suggest, Markus, a lot of learning is much more experiential. It's much more meeting somebody. It's much more getting inspired by seeing something. And actually, particularly my wife, Nicola, I remember very vividly driving in a car. I think we were going on a visit down to a worky kind of visit down to the south of England somewhere. And she's saying, what would it be like if instead of just publishing these papers, people could find out each other. They could connect to these other good things. And I love maps. As a child, I've always loved maps. So what we started to do was think about how we could get people who we think are doing the best stuff to put themselves on a map, and then how people could just connect as a network and they could learn from each other. So instead of, it's not necessarily very good for me personally, but instead of paying me to come around the other side of the world, they just say, oh, Markus seems to be doing some really good stuff. Let's just connect with Markus. And let's just all those connections. So really to take power away from a consultant or an expert and actually to invest power in each other was the idea. So yes, I think that the question is something like, how do we learn how to change the world? How do we learn to make a world where everyone matters? That's what Citizen Network's about. Well, we have to take responsibility for sharing and connecting. So Citizen Network is part of the answer, because it makes it easier for people to learn. And as I said before, what I think that part of the problem with traditional power, and that includes traditional ways of telling people, educating people, is that the values that inform those systems are wrong. I mean, and John, I think, said this earlier, you know, what's given rise to Citizen Network and Citizen Fest and lots of other action recently, I think, is frustration. Because I think that many of us felt, I mean, for many years, I was trying to change government policy and try and create a better system. But what you find is those systems are so imbued with the wrong values, the wrong spirit, that even when they get a good idea, they turn it upside down and turn it into a half good idea or a crappy idea. And so, you know, I think I have much more faith in ordinary human beings and our ability to work together to keep good ideas evolving, learning and growing. Because if you're not motivated by money or power or fame, you just want to do the right thing, then you just need to know where the good stuff is going on. You don't care about what the most powerful people in the country think, because you know they probably don't think very much at all. And what they do think is not worth listening to. We are led by Boris Johnson. I mean, abandon all hope, all ye who think the system is rational and is going to deliver good answers. It's not going to work like that. But we have millions of great people in our country, and there are millions and billions of good people around the world. So why don't we start learning together as equals? That's my kind of woolly answer, Markus, to your question.
Thank you, Simon. I wrote it all down. John, what do you think? What is the question where Citizen Network is the answer?
Yeah, I think Simon's pretty much answered that for me. It's I think in our culture here in the UK, there's not a strong culture of citizenship within a kind of monarchical system. We're all subjects. And so Citizen Network for me is the answer to the question of what do we do if we don't want to be subjects? What do we do if we don't want to be subjected by other people, whether they're in our family, in our community, in our society, in our wider life? What do we do if we have a disability and we don't want to be subjected to the experts or the people that don't think we have capacity, or the people that think, you know, there's no point in assisting that person because they'll never amount to much. So it's about putting into practice the principles of equality and diversity, I guess, and trying to, as Simon says, trying to act them out in a different sort of way, in a different sort of structure that's got better values and principles at its core, that that don't draw us back into the old ways of doing things through a hierarchy, and which immediately takes you back towards subjection rather than the equality of citizenship. So yeah, it's powerful stuff. I mean, if we take it seriously, I think I was also drawn to something you said earlier about how some of these rational concepts that we're talking about here find expression emotionally through music and things like that. I think that's it. Maybe it didn't start off like that, but it's become about that as well. I think it's how do we make this human and personal, and that's a key value and principle as well. You know, that many of us in our professional training were told not to get too involved. There was a professionally sound thing to be slightly removed or detached from what you were doing. And while many of us resisted that, we didn't always know how to give expression to that. Something about that wasn't right. You know, that you have to be personally involved. You have to, you know, it's just, you have to invest what you're doing with humanity and not just cold kind of social justice. And maybe where Simon's reminder from Wendy comes in, you know, don't forget about love. You know, not many of us were encouraged to write about love when we were doing our social work training. So, yeah. So all of those things to me, equality, diversity, humanity, putting those things into practice. And I suppose putting them into practice, not just in your own backyard, but trying to do it in this international way that we're trying to do it as well, which it's just so enriching as well, I think, Markus. You know, that even just the sound of you saying kukunori makes me smile. And I think that's, even if I forget what it means, you know, it's just the sound of it, and there's a kind of poetry there that, anyway.
You're correct. It comes from a poem telling about the story of two trolls, Kukunori and Kalahari. They are trolls, a couple of trolls thinking about the world, written by a Finnish poet who suffered from mental health issues, but was able to have a very, very good career here in Finland. And if you the core principles of your community come from poetry, I think we are on the right track in a way. But on top of that art is the connection to feelings and emotions that lead into action. The marketing people know this. They try to get us emotional to buy stuff. But like you said, Simon and John, that also these kind of dark feelings of anxiety and fear is also on my backbone. I come from a country being sort of overcome by other countries and being independent for a very, very short while. But that's why we have a very equal society in a way. Now we have challenges when other people are rich, other people are poor. There's changing environment in labor. Some people are unemployed. It's the working life is more demanding, and these kind of issues have raised me the question that what is there for the rest of us? All these nations and big organizations, they are for experts and people who are well off. But what is the citizen network for ordinary people? To those people that nobody cares about. For those people who nobody comes to ask, how are you doing and what is a good life for you? There must be networks for the rest of us in a way. And we could be the one. when you don't have anything, you have it all. When you don't have obstacles, no walls and no borders, no labels, then you're free to do stuff that sort of doesn't fit into your ordinary program. And this kind of freedom that the keys also express lead the way for an environment where things can happen. And when people experience that, hey, I'm in that environment, I'm not an outsider, I can also find strength in others and in these values and visions for the future. Simon, how do you see the vision and the future of Citizen Network? Where are we now and where are we heading in your perspective?
Yeah, so really good question. I love that point at the end. I mean, I think that it sounds funny in a way, but isn't authority a lot of kidology? Like, what has authority? What is it? Very often it's something we imbue authority in things. This is the what strikes me. So like John, a lot of my life has been in this social care disability area, and a lot of time you're trying to persuade people, the system. So I think of like we have something called, I shouldn't be too rude, this is live, isn't it? But there are bits of government that are supposedly the experts on social care, and it's bullshit. It's bullshit. It really isn't got any validity at all. And but because it has a symbolic place in the system, it has authority, and we all orientate towards it. If only we could get it to bless us, becomes the problem. And one of the beautiful things that you've touched on just now, Markus, I think about Citizen Network, and John talked about, and it's a funny thing. The world is huge, but it's also finite. It's just what it is. It's all of us. We are one in the world. And if you throw away the wall of countries, or you just treat it as a kind of an interesting thing, but not the fundamental thing, then you can also throw away all of this false authority. So we can start to be experts. We can create expertise and knowledge embedded in communities. So this is a long answer to your question, but a lot of the work, John and I and you, Markus, and many of our friends, many of the people involved in Citizen Network could also be described as social innovators. And social innovation can be very small. It can be me doing something different with my life that's new and unusual, or it can be a system change or an organizational development or a new way of organizing things in your community, all sorts of different ways of social innovation. But it's all, let's do something new and let's try and do something better, and let's learn from that process. That's what social innovation is about. One of the things I learned was that when social innovation meets government, government tends to try and steal the learning, and it misunderstands what's really going on. What I wanted to do was create a community of people who genuinely cared about the learning, who didn't want to do it because it was the thing that was told was right, but they wanted to do it because it worked, because it made life better, because it was fun and interesting and engaging. And all of this stuff is actually in conflict with that. So I think that what Citizen Network can do in practice is it can help give birth to movements around ideas and themes and different ways of doing things. Citizen Fest is a fantastic example of, I say, that cultural meeting. One of the projects that we were also very well developed in is something called the Self-Directed Support Network. So this is a little bit more technical, and that maybe I'm a bit like that. I'm a bit kind of overly rational, but the people who've really driven the development of systems of support where people can be in control, most of the good folk are inside Citizen Network already. We can network and we can learn and we can share and we can develop a sense of what's going on, what the challenges are, how to improve things. And we can, and maybe if people are missing from that, we can invite them in and we can build things together with them without having to wait for authority from above. And then maybe also sometimes when you really do need things to change, you can start campaigning and organizing. So one of our partners at Citizen Network is the UBI Lab Network. And this is very new, but it's all about challenging income security to push for a system more like basic income. So then I think sometimes what Citizen Network can do is can help platform campaigns that connect to different aspects of the keys. And I look around at some of my friends doing fantastic stuff around the world, and I just think, well, you know, if we could get our act together and realize how powerful we are, then we could bring around momentous change, because the world is desperate for change, for citizenship. And one of the most fundamental areas, and it's not an area where I'm a special expert, but it's pretty obvious that we need to all act, is climate and the natural world. And to change the trajectory of the earth, to stop us, you know, to create a livable climate, to stop us extinguishing this diversity of the planet through species extinction, by helping us live in harmony with each other and the world, will take citizenship. It takes each of us changing how we live together, changing the systems of power and energy use, travel and transport. So, you know, there are other great people leading fantastic stuff around that, but I think we need to see the connections, and we need to take some responsibility for exploring what role can we play, and how can we help that movement, and how can we remind people, you know, this is our responsibility, it's our earth. These are very fundamental issues. So yeah, I think it's still very early days. We're 4 years old, and this has all been grown by love and volunteer effort, and there's very little kind of money involved. But yeah, I'll quote, you said that we've got 150 organizations joined. We've actually got 190, Markus. So and it keeps going up, and individuals join, and so we're still learning how to be a network. We're still, and you and I have now set up some legal structures that we think might be helpful, registering the Citizen Network as a co-op in Finland. And that will help us, I think, do some more things practically to support good action. But I don't know, that was a little bit, lot too much there, but that's kind of my vision, Markus.
Thanks, Simon. I think this is a discussion that never ends, because we invite all people to join Citizen Network. The joining is free, and it happens through our website, www.citizennetwork.org. So Google it and join today, because we are having this kind of Citizen Network cafes every month now. And we invite you all to discuss about what is the future of Citizen Network. What do you think, John? What is the future of Citizen Network in your perspective?
I think something we've hit upon in this conversation is really quite helpful. Markus, you were taking us there, I think, in the sense that the 1%, you know, the governments, the wealthy folk in society, they have their networks, and we are excluded from them. So this is the network for the rest of us, potentially. I'm not saying that's what it is at the moment, but if this is about the vision, then yeah, why not? It's inevitably a political thing then, and yeah, I suppose we all have a sharp intake of breath when we think about that, because we know the pitfalls of politics, and so we need to keep it at that more strategic level of political, which is just about, you know, how the world is run in the interests of the majority of people. That's what we're about here. I think trying to ensure within the 99% that we respect the differences and the differences of experience, and the still enormous gaps between the richest of us and the poorest of us, which a gap that's, instead of narrowing, closing. So yeah, it's a vision for a different kind of politics that isn't really politics as we know it, and certainly not party political, but it is trying to do something about the corrupt power system that we've touched on a few times. And Simon's talking about the leadership in the UK, pretty obviously corrupt and serving its own interests at every turn, and serving the interests of a very narrow segment of like-minded people. So yeah, and I one of the dangers, I can hear it as I speak, that we get into a kind of negative frame of mind about that. So the vision would be that we stay positive and solution focused, and we need to fight, but we need to propose answers as well, and act those answers out. More importantly, I think was what Simon was saying, that we have to demonstrate and show and share those answers, and not just get bogged down in wars of attrition. So other people need to keep me away from those. They're compelling.
Thank you, John. I think a true network also includes some space. Citizen Network is also a platform for different kinds of ideas and discussion. That also the reality is negotiable in a way, that we could have the same room for our realities in a way, because only through that, like Simon says, we find good stuff. But how to make it work, then that's another thing too.
A thought comes to mind there in some of the work that we're doing at the moment that brings self-directed support together with Citizen Network, really. And it's something that we decided to call Advocacy Plus. So yet people need advocacy. People need people to help them in the fight if they've got bogged down in the system and the system's just not responding to them at all. So that advocacy is really important. But if it stops there, nothing much changes. So it's like Advocacy Plus, the solution focused, look, if we just thought about this in a different sort of way, here's what we could do, here's what we could achieve, and demonstrating to the system, to everyone affected by it, that there is another way, and we know how to do this. We've done it before. It was done last week in that town. It was done last year in another country. We know how to do this, and just keep plugging away. That this is not as good as it gets, as some people have said. We can do so much more on a much more consistent basis, and that over time hopefully becomes the norm for people.
Thank you, John. Our hour is almost over, and like I mentioned, this is the first Citizen Network Cafe that we are having, but now after each month I commit myself of opening the cafe for everybody, so feel free to join digitally all over the world. Probably there will be also different cafes and different time zones, so that's a space where we can explore what is the question where Citizen Network is the answer. And we invite all of you to take part in discussion, but also into action. And this week is full of action. Just yesterday, I spent 2 hours with Chirla from United States, who have a lot of skills in organizing these advocacy issues with immigrants and paperless people in the United States. So the struggle, in a way, gives us the tools, and it also connects us to the network that supports Citizen Network in our role to explore a world for us all, where there is no rest of us. We are all in this together. We are one. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, John, for this conversation. I hope you have the time to come to other discussions at the No Labels, No Walls Plus We Are One festival. We are running today 15 hours worth of program coming from all over the world. So join us and watch it live. Watch the We Are One stream live from the Facebook. And let's meet in the next Citizen Network Cafe. Thank you.